The desert road exploded beneath the convoy without warning, the first Humvee erupting into a tower of flame that shredded steel and men into pieces. The shockwave rattled teeth and eardrums, the sandstorm of fire swallowing the screams. Private First Class Michael Hale, 24, hands welded to the wheel of the second Humvee, had less than a second to react before debris showered his windshield. A door landed in the sand ahead of him, spinning like some grotesque carnival prize. He swerved, tires biting into the dust, narrowly missing the charred wreckage of what had been their lead vehicle. Jesus Christ, that's Baker. That's Baker up there, the gunner on Hale's roof shouted through the comms, his voice torn by panic. Hale's heart hammered against his chest like it was trying to escape. He didn't have the luxury of panic. He gritted his teeth, jerked the wheel back and pushed the Humvee into the space between fire and gunmetal. Eyes forward. Sergeant McCall barked from the passenger seat, voice thunder over the chaos. Keep us moving, Hale. Don't you fucking stop. Rounds cracked from the ridgeline. The insurgents had timed it perfectly, the IED to stall them, then gunfire to finish the job. Tracers licked the sand in front of Hale's hood. He pressed harder on the gas, the Humvee groaning as the engine fought the incline. Sweat dripped from his helmet strap into his mouth, salty and bitter. The turret above them banged, Corporal Dorsey laying down suppressive fire with the .50 cal, the thumping rhythm almost drowning out the chaos outside. Hale couldn't see the shooters, only the muzzle flashes sparkling like fireworks from the rocks ahead. Left ridge. Dorsey shouted, brass raining down through the gunner's hatch. Three more RPG. The whoosh of a rocket-propelled grenade sliced the air. Hale saw the streak and yanked the wheel right. The Humvee jolted, suspension screaming as it swerved, the RPG detonating in the sand just yards away. Shrapnel rattled against their armor like hail. Keep it steady, Hale. McCall's hand slapped the dash, his tone balanced between fury and control. We punched through or we're dead. But it wasn't just them. Behind Hale, 2 more Humvees were pinned, one already burning from the explosion's aftermath. Screams and garbled comms filled the headset. He wanted to glance back, wanted to help, but his job was forward. Always forward. He stomped on the accelerator. The Humvee roared, climbing the hill toward the kill zone, straight into the bite of enemy fire. His knuckles whitened against the steering wheel, every muscle in his arms tense enough to tear. Each decision he made, a swerve, a brake, a press of the gas, was a line between survival and a body bag. Driver, listen to me. McCall barked, his hand gripping the oh-shit handle. Stay centered on the ridge road, don't oversteer. Let the gunner do the work. I'm fucking trying, Sarge. Hale shot back, his voice breaking against the noise. The sky ahead exploded again. Dirt geysered from another blast on the roadside. He jerked left, tires sliding. The vehicle fishtailed, but he corrected, pushing it back onto the dirt path, engine roaring. Bullets pinged off the armored glass. The windshield spiderwebbed. Hale flinched but didn't let up. His world had shrunk to tunnel vision. Road, hands, engine. The rhythm of survival. Dorsey screamed from above, unloading a full belt. 1 down. 2 down. They're scattering. No, wait, another RPG. Right side 200. Hale didn't even see the fighter, he only saw the flash. He slammed the brakes, teeth rattling, and the rocket shot overhead, detonating against the rocks behind them with a bone-rattling crack. The Humvee nearly stalled, gears grinding in protest. Hale rammed it back into gear, pressing the accelerator like his foot was a hammer driving a nail. The convoy staggered behind him, what was left of it. Smoke rose from the lead vehicle, the last Humvee still spitting fire in return. Over the comms, voices cracked, desperate, half-cut by static. Bravo 2, this is Bravo 4. We're hit bad, engine smoking. Fuck, they've got us bracketed. Hale's chest twisted, but he couldn't stop. Orders screamed through his headset, commanders overlapping in chaos. McCall finally ripped his headset cord free and growled, "We're not dying here. Push forward, Hale, or we all fry." Something inside Hale clicked. The fear, the noise, even the smell of burning flesh ahead, it all narrowed into a single razor-sharp thread of instinct. He wasn't just driving. He was the weapon now. He shifted gears hard, the Humvee lurching forward as if sharing his rage. He drove not just to escape, but to cut through the kill zone like a blade, drawing fire, daring the bastards on the ridge to focus on him. Bullets ricocheted, sparks blooming against the armored hull. Dorsey cursed, firing back. McCall's jaw was set, eyes locked on the road ahead, trusting Hale completely. Trusting him to carry them out of hell. And Hale? Hale wasn't letting go of that wheel until he did. The first moment of relief came like a gasp of air after drowning. The ridge dipped, the gunfire thinning, the last crack of rounds fading behind them. Dust plumed in their wake, blood still pumping in Hale's ears like war drums. No one spoke for a full 5 seconds. Just the hum of the engine, the smell of smoke, the taste of adrenaline sharp on their tongues. Then McCall exhaled, slow, steady, as though he hadn't been screaming seconds earlier. He pulled his mic back in, voice hard as stone. Bravo 1 to all units. Rally point Delta, rally point Delta. Move now. Static, then broken affirmatives. Hale didn't dare loosen his grip, not yet. The ridge was behind them, but the war wasn't. His heart was still trying to punch through his chest, his breath ragged, but the thought that he'd kept them alive, for now, anchored him. Good driving, McCall said finally, almost casually, like it didn't matter. But Hale caught the tiny shift in his tone, the hint of something deeper. Not praise, not exactly. A recognition. Hale didn't answer. He kept his eyes forward, the road stretching endlessly into the desert. The silence that followed was heavier than the firefight. Because Hale knew what they'd left behind. Baker's Humvee burning. Men screaming, cut off by static. Decisions carved in blood. He was still behind the wheel. But he couldn't shake the thought, the one that chilled him more than bullets, that maybe that's all they thought he was. Just a driver. They had no idea what he was about to become. The dust cloud swallowed them as the Humvee tore across the barren stretch, every bump in the road rattling bolts and bones. Hale's hands were still glued to the wheel, sweat soaking the leather of his gloves. He couldn't unclench them, not yet. The fight was behind them, but his body didn't know it. Every nerve screamed that another round was coming, another IED waiting, another ambush just around the next curve. McCall's voice cut through the static like a razor. Bravo 4 report. Status. Nothing but garbled static. Bravo 4 sound off. A few agonizing seconds passed before a broken voice finally came through. Bravo 4 here, engine smoking, 1 Kia, 1 WIA. We're limping, Sarge. We ain't gonna make Delta without help. McCall's jaw flexed, but his reply was sharp and unflinching. Copy. Hold position. Bravo 1 en route. He dropped the mic, turned his eyes on Hale. Change of plan. We're swinging back. Hale blinked, disbelief rushing in. Swinging back. After what we just drove through. McCall's glare snapped to him. There are men, Hale. You think we leave them to die? No, but, Hale's throat closed on the words. He'd just dragged them out of hell and now McCall wanted to drive back in. His gut twisted at the thought, but he couldn't say no. Orders were orders. Turn us around, McCall said low, final. Hale's stomach flipped. He eased the wheel, the Humvee groaning as it swung into a wide arc, dust spraying out behind the tires. Dorsey cursed from the turret. Sergeant, this is suicide, Dorsey barked, eyes wide as he scanned the ridgeline through his scope. Those bastards will be waiting for us, reloaded, ready. We go back, we're targets all over again. You shut your mouth and keep your eyes open, McCall snapped. We're not abandoning Bravo 4. Not while I breathe. The weight of his words pressed down on all of them. Hale didn't argue again. He fixed his eyes forward, knuckles pale on the wheel, and drove back toward the smoke and the memory of fire. The road stretched like a noose, every rock and shadow a potential trigger. Hale's breath grew shallow, his chest tight. His mind replayed the explosion from earlier, the Humvee shredding like paper, men gone in an instant. He gritted his teeth and pushed the thought down. Drive. Just drive. The ridge loomed ahead, quiet now, too quiet. Dorsey's gun swept side to side, his finger twitching against the trigger. I don't like this, he muttered. Too calm. They should be shooting already. They're watching, Hale thought, though he didn't say it. They were out there, eyes hidden behind rocks and shadows, waiting for the moment. McCall raised his binoculars, scanning the smoke plume where Bravo 4 was pinned. There, he muttered, pointing. Hale caught sight of the crippled Humvee, black smoke curling into the desert sky. A man waved frantically from beside it, shirt tied around his bleeding arm. Another slumped against the vehicle, unmoving. Hale pressed the gas. The engine howled. Hold steady. McCall barked. The world slowed in Hale's vision. He scanned every rock, every ledge, searching for the flash of a rifle or the streak of an RPG. His pulse thumped in his ears, each beat counting down the seconds to death. Then, movement. Left ridge. A figure rose, shouldering a launcher. Hale didn't think. He yanked the wheel, tires screaming as the RPG shot past, detonating in the sand where they'd been a heartbeat earlier. Contact left. Dorsey roared, opening up with the .50 cal. The gun's thunder rolled across the desert, brass raining down on Hale's shoulders. The ridgeline erupted with muzzle flashes. Bullets peppered the Humvee, one cracking against Hale's side window, spiderwebbing the glass. He clenched his jaw, held the wheel steady. If he swerved too much now, Bravo 4 was dead. "Get us to them, Hale?" McCall shouted, voice raw. "I'm trying." Hale spat, muscles burning as he forced the vehicle forward. Dorsey's fire ripped through the insurgents on the ridge, bodies crumpling, rifles scattering. But for every one he dropped, another muzzle flash sparked. Hale felt each round that pinged against their hull like a hammer against his skull. Closer. 50 yards. He could see the wounded soldier's face now, pale beneath the blood. Another RPG whooshed overhead. Hale ducked instinctively, though he didn't dare let go of the wheel. The rocket smashed into the ground behind them, sending a shockwave through the Humvee. Almost there. McCall barked. 10 yards. Hale slammed the brakes, tires spitting dust as the Humvee skidded to a stop beside Bravo 4's wreck. Go. Go. Cover them. McCall roared, flinging his door open and leaping out, rifle raised. Dorsey unleashed another barrage from the turret, cutting down anyone stupid enough to raise their head. Hale sat frozen, every instinct screaming to stay inside, to keep driving, to escape. But the door was open and McCall was already dragging the wounded soldier toward them. Hale swallowed hard, shoved the gear into park and yanked his rifle from the rack. He forced his legs to move, boots pounding sand as he rounded the Humvee. The air stank of burning fuel and blood. One soldier was already gone, his body slumped half out of Bravo 4's ruined door, eyes glazed and empty. The other writhed in McCall's grip, groaning, blood soaking the makeshift bandage. "Hale, cover us." McCall barked. Hale dropped to a knee, rifle snapping to his shoulder. His sights swept the ridge, finger tense on the trigger. Muzzle flashes winked back at him, each one a promise of death. He fired, bursts cracking, shoulder slamming with recoil. He didn't know if he hit anything. He just kept shooting, kept their heads down. McCall hauled the wounded man to their Humvee, shoving him inside. "Dorsey, keep that fire up." "Hale, move your ass." Hale sprinted back, heart in his throat. A round kicked sand at his feet, another smacked against the Humvee's rear bumper. He dove inside, slamming the door just as McCall climbed in after him. "Go." McCall barked. Hale didn't hesitate. He slammed the gearshift, stomped the gas, and the Humvee roared back to life, tearing away from the wreck. Bullets chased them, but the ridge was behind them again, shrinking in the mirrors. Dorsey kept firing until the enemy fire faded, until the desert swallowed them whole once more. Only then did the silence return. Hale's chest heaved, sweat soaking his uniform, hands trembling against the wheel. He forced himself to keep steady, to keep the vehicle smooth. The wounded soldier groaned in the back, clutching his side, blood pooling between the seats. McCall ripped open a medkit, hands working fast. "Stay with me, soldier. You're gonna be fine. Stay awake, you hear me?" The soldier's lips moved, words slurred. Hale caught fragments through the mirror. Why'd you come back? Thought you'd leave us." McCall didn't answer. His jaw was set, eyes focused, but Hale could see it, the flicker of something human breaking through the stone. Hale kept driving, but the words stuck in his skull. "Thought you'd leave us." Wasn't that the question for all of them? Who do you leave behind, and who do you risk everything to save? The rally point finally came into view, a cluster of low hills hidden enough to regroup. Hale guided the Humvee behind cover, cutting the engine at last. For a moment, none of them moved. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the ragged breaths of the wounded. McCall finally leaned back, blood on his hands, and met Hale's eyes. "You did good, driver," he said, voice low. Hale wanted to feel pride, but all he felt was hollow. The image of Bravo 4's dead soldier burned behind his eyes. The explosion. The screams. The smoke. He'd saved some. Not all. And he knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The desert night had teeth. It bit through Hale's sweat-soaked uniform, gnawed at his bones, and refused to let him sleep. He sat behind the wheel of the Humvee even though the engine was off, staring into the black horizon. The stars above were indifferent, scattered across the sky like careless shrapnel. In the back, Corporal Dorsey was snoring, the sound harsh, restless, interrupted by murmurs that gave away dreams no soldier wanted to admit. Sergeant McCall was awake, though, his silhouette outlined against the faint red glow of his cigarette. He hadn't said a word since patching up the wounded man they'd hauled out of the wreck. The wounded soldier was Private Keenan, barely 20, his face pale even in the dark. He drifted in and out of consciousness, every exhale a wheeze, every inhale a battle of its own. The medic in the convoy had promised he'd live if they could evac him fast enough. But evac hadn't come. Command was silent, the radios clogged with half-broken transmissions. Hale checked his watch. 0320. He rubbed his eyes, but the moment he closed them he saw the blast again. Baker's Humvee disintegrating, fire swallowing his screams. He shook it off, fingers tightening on the wheel. If he let himself linger, he'd lose it. And Hale couldn't afford to lose it. McCall finally broke the silence. "You drive like a man with a death wish?" he muttered, smoke curling from his lips. Hale turned his head, meeting the sergeant's gaze through the dark. "You told me to get us out. I got us out." "You did," McCall said evenly. He took another drag, the ember flaring bright, then exhaled. "But next time you think before you jerk that wheel. One wrong move and we're upside down in a ditch. Then we're meat." Hale bristled. "If I hadn't swerved, that RPG would have turned us into meat anyway." McCall didn't reply right away. He flicked the cigarette into the sand, crushing it under his boot. "Fair," he said finally. "But I don't like fair. Fair gets people killed. Precision keeps them alive. You want to be more than a driver? Learn precision." The words sank deep, heavier than Hale expected. More than a driver. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. By dawn, command finally came through. Evac was scrubbed. Too hot, they said, air assets stretched thin. Hale watched McCall grind his teeth as the news played through the headset. "So what the hell are we supposed to do, leave him to bleed out?" McCall barked into the mic. The reply was static, then the flat tone of a distant officer. "Hold position. Reinforcements ETA 24 hours. Do what you can until then. Bravo 1 out." McCall ripped the headset off and slammed it against the dash. "Goddamn assholes," he muttered. His eyes flicked to Keenan, whose breath rattled shallowly. 24 hours was a death sentence. The convoy regrouped slowly, what was left of it. 3 Humvees now, battered, blackened from the fight. Men limped, swore, cleaned rifles with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Hale watched them from his seat, the weight of their stares pressing on him. They didn't say it, but he saw it in their eyes. He'd driven them through hell and back, and they weren't sure if they trusted him for it, or if they were alive because of it. By midday the heat returned, the kind that baked brains inside helmets. Flies gathered around Keenan's bandage, and Hale had to swat them away every few minutes. His groans grew weaker, his lips cracked. "Water," Keenan whispered once, barely audible. Hale unscrewed his own canteen and pressed it to his lips. The boy sipped, coughed, then slipped back into unconsciousness. "Don't waste too much," Dorsey muttered from the turret, eyes scanning the horizon. "We don't know how long till resupply." Hale shot him a glare. "He's dying. He gets what he needs." "Yeah. And what about when you're dying of thirst? Who gives you what you need?" Dorsey snapped. Before Hale could reply, McCall cut in, his voice hard. "Enough. Both of you." He adjusted the map in his lap, lines traced in grease pencil. "Command says stay put, but command doesn't know shit about where we are. We sit here, we're fish in a barrel. We move, maybe we find cover, maybe we make it back to base on our own terms." "You're talking about disobeying orders?" Dorsey said flatly. McCall's eyes narrowed. "I'm talking about survival. Orders don't mean a damn thing if we're all corpses in the sand." The silence stretched. Hale felt something tighten in his chest. This was the kind of moment that shifted everything, the fork in the road where one choice meant life and the other meant death. McCall's gaze settled on him. "Driver. You've got the wheel. What do you think?" The question hit harder than gunfire. Hale wasn't used to being asked, not like this. His job was to steer, to follow, to shut up and drive. Now McCall was staring at him like his opinion mattered. Like the next move hinged on him. He swallowed, eyes flicking to Keenan, then back to the horizon. "We can't stay here. They know where we are. If they want to finish us, they will. We need cover. Somewhere we can dig in until reinforcements come, or better yet, move closer to base." Dorsey muttered, "Suicidal. You think they won't be waiting out there? They've got IEDs strung across every goat trail in this desert. You drive us into one of those, we'll wish we stayed put." Hale clenched his fists against the wheel. "If we sit, we die. If we move, maybe we live. I'll take maybe." McCall studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then maybe it is." The decision was made. They rolled out by late afternoon, 3 Humvees crawling across the desert like armored beetles. Hale led the way, eyes locked on the road, searching for anything that looked off, disturbed sand, wires, shadows that didn't belong. His nerves were razor wire tight, every mile another trigger waiting to snap. Hours passed. The heat faded, replaced by the chill of dusk. Keenan groaned in the back seat, slipping deeper into delirium. His voice was hoarse, muttering names Hale didn't recognize, begging for home. Hale's grip tightened on the wheel with every word. Then, movement. Up ahead, a cluster of low buildings, half-crumbled, abandoned. An old village left to rot under the sun. McCall raised a fist, signaling a halt. The convoy stopped, engines rumbling low. He scanned the structures with his binoculars, jaw tense. Could be shelter, McCall muttered. Could be a trap. Dorsey scoffed. Out here, everything's a trap. Hale felt his chest tighten again. The buildings were cover, yes, but they were also perfect for an ambush. Still, Keenan wouldn't survive another night in the open. And McCall knew it. We clear it, McCall decided. If it's safe, we hole up. If not, we burn it and move. The men fanned out, rifles up, boots crunching against sand. Hale followed, weapon tight in his hands, every shadow a threat. The buildings loomed like broken teeth, windows dark, doors hanging from rusted hinges. The first one was empty, nothing but sand and bones. The second smelled of rot, a dead goat lying in the corner, maggots squirming. The third. A shot cracked. The soldier beside Hale dropped, blood spraying across the wall. Hale spun, firing before he even saw the target. A figure in rags crumpled from a window, rifle clattering from his grip. Contact! McCall roared. The village erupted. Gunfire poured from windows, rooftops, shadows. Insurgents swarmed like ants from holes Hale hadn't seen. Hale's stomach dropped. They were in the kill box again. Back to the Humvees. McCall bellowed, dragging the fallen soldier by his vest. Bullets chipped the walls, snapped past their ears. Hale's heart hammered, his legs burning as he sprinted. He dove into the driver's seat, slammed the ignition. The Humvee roared awake. Dorsey scrambled into the turret, unleashing a thunderous barrage. Go, go, go! McCall shouted, shoving Keenan back inside before climbing in himself. Hale floored it, tires spitting sand as they tore out of the village. Gunfire chased them, bullets rattling off armor, windows cracking. He swerved hard, adrenaline surging, every instinct screaming to drive faster, to escape. An explosion ripped behind them, one of the other Humvees catching an RPG. Flames lit the dusk sky, screams tearing through the radio. Hale's vision blurred, but he didn't slow. He couldn't. McCall shouted coordinates, Dorsey's gun thundered, Keenan moaned in the back, and Hale drove like the devil was on their tail. Because he was. The desert swallowed them again, but Hale knew what it meant. Another decision, another cost. More men gone. And his hands, the hands on the wheel, were soaked in the weight of it. They thought he was just a driver. But every mile proved otherwise, the desert night swallowed their screams. The second Humvee burned bright behind them, black smoke twisting into the dark sky. Hale kept his eyes forward, refusing to look in the mirror, refusing to see who they'd left behind. His hands were locked on the wheel, white-knuckled, the vibrations of the engine running up his arms like electricity. Bravo 2, sound off. McCall barked into the headset, voice raw. Static. Bravo 2, goddammit, report. Finally, a voice cut through, ragged, panicked. We're still rolling, engine coughing, 2 wounded. Lost Martinez. Repeat, Martinez is gone. Hale's gut twisted, but he didn't let it show. He kept the Humvee steady, the road rough beneath the tires, headlights cutting through dust. Every mile they drove felt like stolen time, a countdown that could end with another blast beneath them. McCall slammed a fist against the dash. His fury wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, simmering, dangerous. That village was no accident. They knew we'd stop. They're hurting us. Dorsey's voice came down from the turret, harsh, almost frantic. Then where the fuck do we go, Sarge? Forward, backward, it's the same death trap. You see the way they're working us? Like we're rats in a maze. McCall didn't answer. He just stared out into the dark, his jaw grinding. Hale finally spoke, his voice low but steady. Then we stop letting them steer us. We make our own way. The words hung heavy in the Humvee. Dorsey leaned down, peering through the hatch. And how exactly do we do that, driver? You got some magic roadmap in your head? You think you can outsmart people who live in this sand? Hale's grip tightened. I don't need a map. I just need to keep us alive long enough to get somewhere they don't expect. Somewhere they're not waiting. McCall's eyes flicked to him, sharp, measuring. Then slowly he nodded. Keep driving. But not the road. Take us off. Hale swallowed. Off-road meant no patterns to follow, no predictability. But it also meant no safety nets, no clear paths. Just dirt, rocks, and whatever hell lay ahead. He twisted the wheel, guiding the Humvee off the worn trail and into the open desert. The tires chewed through sand, the suspension bucking hard over uneven ground. The headlights caught nothing but emptiness, sand dunes, jagged rock, shadows stretching forever. For a while, there was only the sound of the engine and the wounded groans from the back. Keenan was still alive but barely. His breath rattled like loose bolts in a can, every inhale a battle. McCall checked him again, adjusting the bandage, whispering something Hale couldn't hear. The silence stretched until Dorsey finally broke it. You realize we're lost now, right? No road, no markers, nothing. We're ghosts in the sand. Better ghosts than corpses, Hale muttered. The hours dragged, the desert endless. Hale's arms ached from gripping the wheel, his eyes burning from staring too long at nothing. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. If he stopped, the doubt would come. The guilt. The faces of the ones they'd left behind. By dawn, the Humvee was rattling, the engine grumbling from the abuse of the off-road drive. The sun crept over the horizon like a slow executioner, heat already pressing against their helmets. They found a shallow wadi, dry and cracked, with enough cover to tuck the Humvee out of sight. Hale killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening. McCall climbed out, stretching his legs, scanning the horizon with binoculars. Dorsey slumped in the turret, muttering curses under his breath. Hale stayed in the driver's seat, staring at his trembling hands. He hadn't realized how much they shook until now. McCall crouched beside the Humvee, pulling a canteen and splashing water over his face. We hole up here for a few hours. Let the engines cool. Then we move again. Dorsey spat into the sand. Move where? You don't even know anymore. We're running blind. McCall's head snapped toward him. We're alive. That's the only direction that matters right now. The argument cut off when Keenan let out a sharp cry from the back. Hale twisted in his seat. The kid's face was ghost white, sweat soaking his uniform, eyes half open but unfocused. He was whispering again, the same word over and over. Mom, Mom, Mom. It gutted Hale. He'd been in that place once, the edge between life and nothing, clinging to one name, one thought. He reached back, gripping Keenan's hand. Stay with us, kid. You hear me? You're not done yet. For a moment, Keenan's eyes met his. Just a flicker of recognition. Then they rolled back, his body convulsing weakly. McCall shoved Hale's hand away, working on him fast, but Hale could see it. The panic even McCall couldn't mask. Minutes stretched into an hour. Keenan's breaths grew shallower, his pulse weaker. Hale sat frozen, helpless, listening as the life bled out of him. When it finally ended, it was quiet. Too quiet. McCall's hand stilled on the boy's chest, his shoulders sinking. No, Hale whispered. McCall didn't look at him. He just reached up, gently closing Keenan's eyes. Then he pulled a poncho from the gear bag and draped it over the body. The silence was unbearable. Hale's chest felt hollow, like something vital had been carved out. Dorsey broke it, his voice harsh, brittle. That's 3 we've lost in 2 days. 3. And for what? We're running in circles, waiting to die out here. Shut up, McCall said, his tone flat but sharp enough to cut. No, you shut up, Sarge, Dorsey snapped. He climbed down from the turret, his face twisted with rage. You keep barking orders like you know where the hell we're going, but we're bleeding men every step. You think command gives a shit? They're not coming. They've written us off. McCall's fist shot out, grabbing Dorsey by the vest, yanking him close. You watch your mouth, Corporal. You think I like this? You think I don't hear every man screaming in my sleep? But we don't break. Not now. Not ever. You want to die whining, go ahead. But not in my unit. The 2 men locked eyes, fury crackling between them. Hale sat frozen, torn between stepping in and staying out. Finally, Dorsey shoved McCall's hand away, muttering, We're already dead. He stormed off a few steps, kicking sand. Hale couldn't take it anymore. He climbed out, standing between them, his voice sharp. Enough. Both of you. We don't have the luxury to tear each other apart. We've got fuel, ammo, and time running out. We either figure it out together, or we're just making it easier for them to finish the job. The words surprised even him, the force behind them, the way McCall's and Dorsey's eyes both snapped to him. For the first time, Hale wasn't just the driver. He was the one keeping the wheels turning, literally and otherwise. McCall's expression shifted, the fury dimming. He nodded once, slow. He's right. Dorsey muttered something under his breath but didn't argue. The rest of the day bled into each other, sand and silence, broken only by the distant echoes of war they couldn't see but could feel in the air. By dusk, McCall had a plan, or at least the outline of one. There's a supply point 30 clicks east, he said, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick. If we can make it, we resupply, refuel, maybe link with another unit. It's a long shot, but it's something. A supply point? Dorsey scoffed. Or another goddamn trap. McCall's gaze hardened. Better a trap we choose than one they spring on us. He looked at Hale then, the weight of command in his eyes. Can you get us there? Hale met his gaze, and for once he didn't feel like just the driver. He felt the responsibility, the burden, the silent agreement that every life in that Humvee, and maybe the convoy, depended on him. Yeah, he said quietly but firmly. I can get us there. And for the first time he believed it. The Humvee rattled like it wanted to shake itself apart, every bolt screaming against the endless sand. Hale's eyes hadn't left the horizon in hours. The desert blurred together, dunes, jagged rocks, mirages that shimmered like ghosts, but he kept the wheel steady, guiding them east. Every bump jarred his spine, every creak of the suspension reminded him how thin the line was between forward motion and breaking down for good. McCall sat in the passenger seat, silent, binoculars clutched tight in his hands. He scanned the horizon, jaw tight, eyes sharp. Dorsey manned the turret, his voice occasionally drifting down in curses when the heat or the silence pressed too hard. Behind them, the remaining Humvee limped along, smoke curling faintly from the hood. It was like dragging a wounded animal, slowed, vulnerable but still alive. Hale stole glances in the rearview, watching its headlights bob over the terrain, praying it wouldn't give out before they reached the supply point. The radio crackled every now and then, mostly static. Command's voice never came. It was like shouting into the void and hearing the void laugh back. By midday the heat was unbearable. Sweat pooled under Hale's vest, stinging his eyes. He licked cracked lips, his canteen already nearly empty. They were rationing now. Every sip felt like theft from the future. McCall finally broke the silence. Another 10 clicks, he muttered, pointing to the faint outline of low structures barely visible through the haze. That's the point. Should be supplies, fuel, maybe even friendlies if we're lucky. Dorsey spat from the turret. Luck? We ran out of that 2 days ago. Shut it, McCall growled. Hale's stomach twisted as the structures grew clearer. They looked small, squat, nothing but concrete boxes half buried in the sand. No movement. No vehicles. No flags. Just silence. He slowed the Humvee, scanning. Doesn't look right, he muttered. McCall raised the binoculars, adjusted, cursed under his breath. Too quiet. No guards. No patrols. Empty? Dorsey called down. Or waiting, Hale said. The convoy rolled to a stop 100 yards out. Engines idled, the sound harsh against the still air. Everyone stared at the compound, unease crawling through the silence. McCall lowered the binoculars. We need fuel. We need water. If it's a trap, we fight through it. Hale's hands tightened on the wheel. He hated the word trap. He hated how often it had been right. Dorsey leaned down, his face slick with sweat. Driver. You're the one steering us into this. You think we should roll in? The weight of the question pressed heavy on Hale's chest. His instinct screamed both ways, go, don't go. But when he looked back at the second Humvee, the wounded inside, the soldiers staring at him with hollow eyes, he knew the answer. We don't have a choice, Hale said finally. We go. McCall nodded, like he'd been waiting for Hale to make the call. Then we go. Hale pushed the Humvee forward, tires crunching over the sand. The compound loomed larger, the concrete walls stained, cracked, weathered by years of heat and war. The gates hung crooked, one twisted open as if inviting them inside. The first Humvee rolled through. Hale's stomach knotted as the tires bumped over the threshold. He expected the explosion any second, the roar of fire, the shockwave. But nothing came. Inside, the compound was eerily empty. Sand drifted across the courtyard, doors hung ajar on broken hinges. Barrels and crates were scattered, but no men, no vehicles, no signs of life. They parked in a loose circle, engines rumbling, guns trained on the shadows. Hale's heart pounded as he scanned every doorway, every rooftop. Still nothing. Dismount, McCall ordered finally. Check for supplies. Quick and clean. The men moved out, rifles raised, boots crunching on sand and broken concrete. Hale climbed out slowly, rifle in hand, scanning. The silence pressed down like a weight. The first building was empty, just dust and broken shelves. The second had barrels of stale water, half evaporated. The third, Hale froze as he kicked the door open. Inside, a row of crates, marked with U.S. supply codes. Sergeant. Hale shouted. McCall and two others rushed in, eyes widening at the sight. McCall pried one open with his knife. Inside, ration packs sealed and untouched. Another crate full of ammo. Another medical kits. For a moment hope flickered. Finally, Dorsey breathed, stepping inside, grinning like a madman. We actually caught a break. Hale's chest loosened for the first time in days. He grabbed a ration pack, the crinkle of plastic almost wholly in his hands. But the hope died just as fast. From outside came a shout, sharp, panicked. Then the crack of gunfire. Contact. Hale's stomach dropped. He rushed to the door just as bullets stitched across the courtyard, ricocheting off the Humvee's armor. Dozens of insurgents poured from the sand dunes beyond the walls, swarming like locusts, rifles blazing. Ambush! McCall roared. The compound exploded into chaos. Dorsey scrambled back to the turret, firing wildly, the .50 cal thundering. Soldiers dove for cover behind crates and walls, returning fire. Hale's pulse slammed in his ears. He ducked low, firing bursts toward the gate where enemies poured in. Shadows darted across rooftops, muzzle flashes sparking. The air filled with dust, gunfire, and screams. McCall dragged a crate to the doorway, flipping it as cover. They let us find the supplies, he growled, firing controlled bursts. They wanted us trapped here. Hale's gut twisted. He'd led them right into it. Again. An RPG streaked across the courtyard, smashing into the second Humvee. The explosion rocked the compound, metal shredding, flames erupting. Men screamed, their voices drowned in the roar. No! Hale shouted, firing until his rifle clicked empty. He slammed in another mag, hands shaking, eyes burning. Dorsey's voice came down from the turret, manic. I got him. I got him. His .50 cal shredded 3 insurgents trying to breach the gate. But another RPG whooshed, striking the wall beneath him. The explosion threw him back, smoke and fire engulfing the turret. Dorsey! Hale screamed. McCall grabbed his vest, yanking him down as bullets tore through the doorway. Stay focused. Keep them out. The fight raged on, seconds stretching into lifetimes. Hale fired until his rifle overheated, until his shoulder bruised from the recoil. The courtyard was littered with bodies, smoke choking the air. Finally the gunfire thinned. The shouts faded. The insurgents retreated, dragging their dead, melting back into the dunes. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Hale staggered out into the courtyard, his ears ringing, chest heaving. The ground was slick with blood. The second Humvee burned, black smoke curling into the sky. Dorsey lay crumpled near the turret, unmoving, half buried in rubble. Hale dropped to his knees beside him, shaking his shoulder. Dorsey. Come on man, get up. Nothing. Just glassy eyes staring at nothing. Hale's throat closed. His vision blurred. He slammed his fist into the dirt, the rage boiling up, hotter than the desert sun. McCall stood nearby, his face carved from stone, but Hale saw the cracks, the grief, the fury, the weight of another man gone. We can't stay, McCall said finally, his voice low, steady. They'll be back. Stronger. Hale looked around at the crates, the ammo, the food, the supplies they needed. And then at the burning Humvee, the bodies, the blood. What the hell was it for? Hale rasped. We got what we needed, and it still cost us everything. McCall's eyes met his. That's war. You don't get clean victories. Just survival. Hale wanted to scream, to tear the walls down with his bare hands. But instead he stood, grabbed his rifle and forced his legs to move. Because McCall was right. There was no clean way out. Only forward. They loaded what they could into the remaining Humvee, moving fast, their movements mechanical, hollow. The bodies they couldn't carry were left under ponchos, the firelight flickering against the concrete. When Hale climbed back into the driver's seat, his hands were steady again. Not calm, never calm, but steady. As the Humvee rolled out of the compound, the supplies rattling in the back, Hale didn't look back at the flames. He kept his eyes forward, jaw set, and thought of the words McCall had thrown at him days ago. You want to be more than a driver? Learn precision. Hale wasn't just driving anymore. He was carving a path through hell 1 mile at a time. And hell wasn't done with him yet. The Humvee growled across the barren flats, loaded down with crates of ammo and water that clattered with every bump. Hale's hands never left the wheel, his knuckles pale, his arms taut like cables. The desert was endless in every direction, but he kept his eyes forward, reading the land the way he once read asphalt back home. The hum of the engine filled the silence left by the dead. The survivors rode hollow. McCall sat beside Hale, helmet tilted back just enough to reveal bloodshot eyes. He hadn't spoken since they'd pulled out of the compound. In the back, 3 soldiers sat shoulder to shoulder among the crates. None of them looked at each other. The loss of Dorsey and the others still hung in the cabin like smoke. Every few minutes Hale glanced in the mirror, half expecting to see dust trails on the horizon. Pursuit, another wave of shadows coming to finish the job. But the desert stayed empty. For now. By nightfall, they reached a ridge of broken stone that rose jagged from the flats. Hale guided the Humvee between 2 boulders and killed the engine. The sudden silence was sharp, like being dropped into a vacuum. McCall finally stirred, rubbing his face. "We'll hole up here. No fires. Rotate watch. 4 hours sleep each." His voice was sandpaper, raw, tired but still steady. The men moved without argument. Hale stayed in the driver's seat, staring out through the cracked windshield. The others unrolled mats on the ground, weapons within reach, helmets tilted over their faces. Within minutes, snores and the slow breaths of exhausted men mixed with the hum of insects. But Hale couldn't rest. Not yet. He climbed out, boots crunching on the stone, and climbed a short rise above the ridge. From there, the desert stretched forever, pale under the moonlight. He crouched, rifle across his knees, scanning. Every shadow could be movement. Every silence, a warning. McCall joined him after a while, carrying 2 canteens. He handed one to Hale. Hale sipped, the warm water bitter but necessary. "You've got the eyes of a man who won't let himself blink," McCall muttered. Hale didn't answer at first. He just kept staring. Finally he said, "If I blink I'll see them again. Keenan. Dorsey." The Humvee burning. McCall sat beside him, his joints popping as he lowered himself. "You think I don't see them too? Every night. Every time I close my eyes." He paused, scanning the horizon. "But you keep moving. You keep fighting. That's how you carry them." Hale's jaw clenched. "And if we can't? If we're just crawling into the next trap?" McCall looked at him, his gaze sharp even in the moonlight. "Then you make sure the trap costs them more than it costs us. That's the difference between surviving and surrendering." The words dug into Hale. He wanted to argue, to spit out the guilt that burned inside him. But instead he just nodded because McCall was right. The only way forward was through. The next morning they moved again. The supplies weighed the Humvee down, but the men needed every bullet, every drop of water. Hale navigated east by the sun, cutting across ridges and dry wadis, always searching for cover, always keeping the horizon in sight. By midday the radio crackled, faint, broken. A voice cut through the static, muffled but real. "Any units, come in, heavy contact, pinned near Alcala, coordinates, repeat, pinned." The signal died. The men in the back sat up, eyes wide. McCall grabbed the handset, adjusting dials, but only static returned. "Alcala?" he muttered. "That's north of here. Maybe 10 clicks." One of the soldiers in back shook his head. "Could be bait. We roll in, we're next on the kill list. Or it's friendlies bleeding out while we sit here with a full load of ammo and wheels." McCall shot back. Silence. All eyes turned to Hale. The driver. The one holding the wheel. Hale's gut tightened. He thought of the compound, how he'd led them straight into a slaughter. He thought of Keenan whispering for his mother, of Dorsey's broken body. If this was another trap, he'd be signing more death warrants. But then he pictured what McCall said, carrying them by fighting forward. He swallowed hard, his voice quiet but firm. "We go." No one argued. Hale turned the Humvee north, the tires grinding over rock and sand. The tension inside the cabin was heavy enough to choke on. Every man checked and rechecked his weapon as if loading steel into their courage. The village came into view by afternoon. Alcala was a cluster of mud brick homes, half collapsed, crumbling under the weight of war. Smoke curled from one corner, faint but rising. Sporadic gunfire echoed, sharp cracks that carried across the flats. Hale slowed, scanning. "There," McCall said, pointing. On the far side of the village, an alley was lit with muzzle flashes. Figures hunkered behind a broken wall, trading fire with unseen shooters across the street. U.S. helmets glinted in the sun. "Friendlies. Punch us in," McCall ordered. Hale slammed the accelerator. The Humvee roared forward, bounding over rubble, sand spraying from the tires. The soldiers in the alley looked up as the vehicle skidded in beside them, armor shielding them for the first time in hours. "Jesus Christ, you guys are late," one of the pinned soldiers shouted, face streaked with grime and blood. His squad was a mess, half their number down, ammo nearly gone. Relief poured into their eyes as Hale's men spilled out, rifles blazing. The fight was instant, brutal. Insurgents had the high ground, firing from rooftops and shattered windows. Bullets tore into the Humvee's armor, pinging like angry fists. Hale fired from behind the door, his shots precise, each one dropping a shadow from the rooftops. McCall coordinated both squads with clipped commands, his voice steady even under fire. Grenades arced through windows, blasting dust and screams into the air. Slowly, methodically they pushed the insurgents back block by block, alley by alley. Hale moved like he was welded to the fight. No hesitation. No wasted bullets. Every shot was deliberate, the lesson McCall had drilled into him now etched into his bones. He cleared corners with ruthless efficiency, his rifle an extension of his rage. When the last insurgent broke and ran, silence finally fell. Smoke drifted through the alleys, acrid and heavy. The friendlies slumped against the wall, alive but wrecked. McCall walked among them, counting. 4 still standing, 3 down, 2 critical, he reported grimly. Evac? One of the wounded asked, hope flickering in his cracked voice. McCall shook his head. No birds. No backup. Just us. The soldier's face fell, but he nodded as if he'd expected nothing else. They loaded the wounded into the Humvee, shoving crates aside to make room. Blood stained the metal floor. Hale climbed back into the seat, his hands steady, his mind sharp. As they rolled out of Alcala, the men were silent. But in that silence, Hale felt something shift. They weren't just running anymore. They weren't just prey. For the first time they'd hit back, and won. That night, camped in the shadow of another ridge, McCall approached Hale while the others slept. He crouched beside the Humvee, his voice low. You did more than drive today, he said. Hale stared at the stars, his rifle across his lap. I just kept us alive. McCall shook his head. No. You led us into the fight. You made the call. And you kept us together in it. He paused, studying Hale. You keep this up, you'll end up more than a driver. Hale didn't answer. But for the first time the thought didn't feel impossible. The desert wind carried the silence. Hale leaned back against the Humvee, eyes still on the stars, and let himself blink. Just once. The Humvee was a coffin on wheels, rattling under the weight of wounded bodies and crates stacked high in the back. Every bump jolted groans from the injured, every rattle of loose bolts sounded like the vehicle begging to die. Hale kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the horizon, sweat rolling down his temples. The desert stretched wide and merciless, and somewhere behind them the enemy was closing. The radio hissed with nothing but static. Command might as well have been on the moon. McCall sat beside Hale, his face stone, headset crooked over his ears. He scanned the map, a torn dirt-stained sheet spread across his knee. We're 10 clicks from the main highway. If we make it, maybe we flag down armor or catch a supply convoy. Big if, Hale muttered. From the turret above, one of the new survivors, Private Lane, a kid barely out of training, shifted uneasily, the barrel of the .50 cal swinging back and forth. His voice trembled down through the hatch. I keep seeing dust back there, Sergeant. Could be the wind. Could be them. They'll come, McCall said flatly. Count on it. Hale pushed the Humvee harder, the engine whining as it tore over sand and gravel. Every second they moved was another second alive. The first shot cracked an hour later. A tracer streaked past the rear bumper, spitting sparks. Then came another. And another. Contact. Rear. Lane shouted from the turret, opening fire. The .50 cal roared, brass casings raining down into the cabin. Hale caught a glimpse in the mirror. 3 technicals bounding over the dunes, heavy machine guns mounted on their beds. Dust plumed behind them, sunlight flashing off steel. Punch it, Hale? McCall barked. Hale slammed the accelerator, the Humvee lurching forward. The engine howled, the suspension groaning as they tore across uneven ground. The crates shifted, wounded men cried out, but Hale didn't let up. The technicals closed fast, spraying rounds that stitched the sand around them, bullets pinging off armor. Lane fired back in ragged bursts, his shouts ragged with fear. I'm hitting him. I think I'm hitting him. Hale swerved hard, sand spraying in wide arcs. He weaved between dunes, trying to break their line of fire, but the enemy mirrored every move, relentless. McCall leaned out the window, rifle braced, firing sharp, controlled bursts at the lead truck. Sparks flew off its hood, but it kept coming. Not enough. McCall growled. He slapped Hale's shoulder. Find me cover. A wadi, a ridge, anything we can use. Hale scanned the horizon. The desert was flat, empty, unforgiving. Then, there. A jagged cut in the land, a dry riverbed snaking east. He yanked the wheel, veering toward it. Hold on, he shouted. The Humvee bounced hard, crashing into the wadi with bone-jarring force. The suspension screamed, the rear tires fishtailed, but Hale kept control, gunning it down the dry channel. The walls rose on either side, giving them cover from half the enemy fire. The technicals followed, engines snarling, guns blazing into the wadi. Bullets sparked off stone, ricocheted wildly, whining past Hale's ears. Lane raked them with fire, the .50 cal booming, dust clouds exploding around the enemy trucks. One technical swerved too close to the wall, its wheel catching on stone. It flipped violently, cartwheeling through the air before slamming down in a fireball. Cheers erupted from the back. Hale didn't waste time. He pushed harder, the Humvee bounding over cracks in the dry riverbed, engine threatening to seize. The remaining two technicals pressed harder, one pulling alongside the ridge above, gunner hammering rounds down into the wadi. Bullets tore into crates, splinters flying. One round punched through the cabin, shredding the seat inches from Hale's arm. Topside. McCall roared. Lane swung the turret up, cutting loose at the ridge. The gun chattered, chewing into the rocks, shredding the gunner in a spray of blood and dust. The technical swerved, clipped the edge of the ridge and rolled down into the wadi, crushing its crew under twisted steel. Only one truck remained. It barreled straight down the wadi behind them, gunner hammering away, bullets rattling like hail against the Humvee's armor. McCall shoved a magazine into his rifle, leaned out the window and fired at the windshield. Take out the driver. But the rounds pinged harmlessly off the reinforced glass. The truck gained, closing fast. Hale gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes. The wadi narrowed ahead, walls closing tight, jagged stone like knives. An idea hit him. Risky. Insane. Perfect. Hold on, he shouted. He yanked the wheel left, then slammed it right, sending the Humvee fishtailing through the tight channel. The rear bumper clipped the wall, sending sparks flying. Behind them, the pursuing truck tried to follow the swerve, too wide. The technical slammed into the wall, the impact tearing it open. The truck exploded, flames boiling up the wadi. The shockwave rocked the Humvee, shrapnel clanging off the armor. Hale fought the wheel, forcing the vehicle straight, engine screaming in protest. Then silence. Only the roar of their own engine, and the ragged breathing inside the cabin. They were alive. Lane let out a wild, manic laugh from the turret. Holy shit. Holy shit. The men in back cheered weakly, fists thumping against the crates. For the first time in days they weren't just running. They'd killed the chase. McCall dropped back into his seat, staring at Hale like he was seeing him for the first time. That maneuver? Jesus Christ. You planned that. Hale kept his eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel. Didn't plan. Just knew the walls would do more damage than we could. McCall shook his head, almost smiling despite the grime and blood. You're not just a driver anymore. You're the goddamn wheelman of death. The words hit Hale like fuel poured on embers. For once, he didn't feel like he was just hauling the living and the dead across the desert. For once, he felt like he was fighting back, with precision. They pushed on, hours blurring into each other. The sun sank, the desert glowing orange before fading to black. The men rotated shifts in the turret, rifles resting across their laps, eyes scanning the horizon. By nightfall, the fuel gauge hovered near empty. Hale felt the Humvee shudders, the engine coughing, hungry. The crates rattled, the wounded moaned, and still the highway was nowhere in sight. Finally, McCall broke the silence. We've got maybe 10 miles left in her. After that, it's boots and blood. Hale swallowed hard, scanning the darkness. 10 miles is enough. It has to be. The radio hissed again, faint. A voice weak, broken. Convoy, highway, Sector 4, urgent evac. McCall snatched the handset. This is Bravo convoy survivors. We're carrying wounded and supplies heading to Highway Sector 4. Repeat, Sector 4. Static. No reply. The silence pressed heavy again. Hale tightened his grip on the wheel, his voice a growl. Then we get to Sector 4. Even if I have to push this Humvee myself. The men in back chuckled weakly, but the sound had weight. It wasn't despair anymore. It was belief. The desert stretched on, and the Humvee carried them forward. One last machine, one last chance, one last fight waiting in the dark. And Hale was ready to drive them straight into it. The end.